Good morning to everyone. I have to make a confession right off the bat. To Candace Anderson, the supervisor who represents Contra Costa County, I actually haven't been to a meeting in Alameda County that had this much energy this early in the morning. And I was standing near the coffee machine, the coffee device, to see how many people were activated by the coffee. But the energy, honestly, the energy and the networking that was going on was pretty exciting prior to starting today's meeting. And although we have an exciting panel and a lot to cover, I have to make that admission very right off the bat. So I liked the energy that was in the room. I'm Keith Carson, and I'm the Vice Chair of the Alameda County Board of Supervisors, and I'm also the Chair of the East Bay Economic Development Alliance for Business. And I want to welcome you to today's incredible session on manufacturing. And I'd like to officially start the meeting by calling this meeting to order for today. I want to thank all of you for taking time to be here for what will be an incredible event, a very informative event, taking time out of your day to be here. East Bay EDA has been in this facility over the years a number of times, and we always look forward to coming out to Contra Costa County, this portion of Contra Costa County. And James, thanks very much for always hosting us here so that, in fact, we can continue that connection between both Alameda and Contra Costa County. How many of you are East Bay EDA members? Raise your hand. Oh, that's pretty good. How many of you are not East Bay EDA members? And it's okay. It's okay. You can raise your hand. Well, I want to say thanks for being here and welcoming you to this organization. Let me tell you just a little bit about who we are, and for those who don't know, and to remind many of you who haven't been at one of our more recent events, kind of who we are. We are a regional East Bay Economic Development Organization. We're an inclusive organization, and by that I mean that we bring together a fair diversity of components to constantly look at this side of the Bay in terms of making sure that we are continuing to grow business, to attract business, and to prepare the workforce for the businesses that are here and the businesses that are to come. I want to divert for a second because I said on this side of the Bay, but we are very active in the Bay Area Council, which represents the 9 Bay Area counties, and look at not only their own individual regions, but how we continue to make the entire Northern California the best place to live, work, and do business. As I said, we're a cross-sector membership group, which means we depend on high-level leadership from business, government, and the nonprofit sectors. Our governing arm is pretty unique as well. We are the only East Bay Economic Development Organization with appointees from, as I stated, both counties, and my colleague, Supervisor Anderson, will be up here in a few minutes. The Mayor's Association make their appointment in both Contra Costa and Alameda County, as well as the City Managers Associations. Our 2 East Bay administrators are pretty active from both Alameda and Contra Costa County in this organization as well. And they're part of our decision-making and governing arm. Our own Economic Development Council make their selections in terms of who represents them from each of the counties as well. On the business side, we have leaders from across different industries, and we have executives representing environmental stewardship, labor, research, K-12 education, post-secondary education, utilities, the Port of Oakland, small business, regional nonprofits, and regional philanthropy. So if you are a member of the governing board, meaning you are a chair or a co-chair of one of our committees, or you serve as an officer, would you please raise your hand? I'd appreciate the showing. And I want to thank those who vest additional time in this organization because they're constantly in between our regional meetings, our executive board meetings, and a number of our signature events that we host, constantly convening groups together in their specific areas of interest as an example, transportation, to make sure that we look at the infrastructure, not just transportation, but everything that's related to infrastructure and how that ties into the whole network of business here in this area. It's not always easy to come to agreement on the key issues because we are such a diverse sector organization. When you have environmentalists and business in the same room, it's kind of interesting discussions at times. But over the years, since the founding of this organization, and next year we'll be celebrating our 30th year anniversary, over the founding of this organization, we have been able to work collaboratively and come up with ways in which we continue to advance the best that we can for the East Bay. Even with that diversity at the table, we try to come to some form of consensus around legislation, around budgets and spending, around direction, and then we go back and we try to nudge each of our respective organizations to kind of go in the same direction. And there's been a number of successes over the last 30 years that prove that point to work out pretty effectively. I'd like to thank our partners for today, AM Bay Area and Mannix, that have been related and working with our organizations for a number of times for putting together today's events. They're the primary host. And as I stated earlier, that we've been out to Hacienda a number of times, and I want to say a big thank you to James Paxson for just making sure that we have this incredible eco-center here as the Hacienda Business Park that produces so much product, the outcome, and is a very important place in the ecosystem, especially the business ecosystem here in the Bay Area. And I'd like to bring James Paxson up to the podium at this time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to welcome you here this morning. Hacienda is actually a collection of over 100 different properties. We're here today at the Rosewood Commons Center, and I'd like to give a quick shout out and ask for a round of recognition for the Swift Real Estate Partners, the ownership of the Rosewood Conference Center, and thank them for their participation in hosting us here this morning. Again, on behalf of all of the investors, the businesses, the employees, and residents who are part of Hacienda, we're really glad to have you here. We cannot tell you how much we value our opportunity to participate in the East Bay EDA. As an organization, it is a critically important one in our opinion. Hacienda does not succeed unless we have success in the greater East Bay region. And the fact that we have an organization like East Bay EDA looking after the economy and helping to kind of nurture it along and bringing together the partnerships that really help make for a successful economy is critical to our success. We don't have it without that. I would say in particular, the fact that we have an organization that's looking after the greater economy, that's bringing together these different partners and providing really critical information to help decision making is huge. And this is why we really welcome the opportunity to be participants. As a matter of fact, as a result of East Bay EDA work, I can now tell you that there are nearly 10,000 manufacturing jobs in the Tri-Valley alone, which is an over 30% increase from 2013. In addition to that, that represents 5% of our workforce. Now, this sounds like really good cocktail conversation, right? But it's really more than that. A lot of planning and investment decisions get based on real information like this. Decisions about how we invest in our education system, how we invest in our infrastructure, our housing, telecommunications, transportation, everything. And so, again, we really, really relish the opportunity to continue work and to receive the benefits from East Bay EDA. And we're very interested in hearing the presentations that are going to be coming this morning on manufacturing, since it is such an important segment of our economy. We're also hoping that Chef Charon is bringing some perhaps samples of his manufacturing that we'll be able to experience firsthand later on. We'll see. But with that, again, thank you for and welcome on behalf of Hacienda. We're glad to have you here.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you, James, again for hosting us in the SWIFT group. It's always a pleasure to be here for our annual meeting. And I do want to just introduce myself briefly. I'm Candace Anderson. I am the county supervisor from District 2 in Contra Costa County. So I have the privilege of representing San Ramon, Danville, Alamo, part of Walnut Creek, Lafayette, Moraga, and Orinda. And also one of my most fun responsibilities I have is being one of the second vice chairs of East Bay EDA. And today you're going to hear some wonderful, great information from all of our speakers, our panelists, and I hope that you're going to go out and share the experience, the information you learned today with many of your colleagues and friends through social media. And up here, we do have our Twitter handle right here and our hashtag. So if any of you are so inclined, by all means, take advantage of that. And we will have at the bottom of each of our slides for future reference. So throughout the day, as you hear something really intriguing, something that you just need to share with everyone, by all means, make sure you tweet it out. Many of you have taken time out of your valuable, busy schedules to be here with us today, and I do want to thank my fellow elected officials who are here. Now, interestingly, we've had this funny challenge of today, many of our city elected officials are down in the southern part of the state because it's the League of California Cities Conference. And so normally at this meeting, we would have 10, 15, 20 city council members, mayors sitting here with us. And just if any elected officials are here, would you please raise your hand? I'd love to recognize you. And I have Ken Mintz. Ken Mintz serves both as an AT&T external affairs government official liaison, whatever your official title is, but he also serves on the San Ramon Valley Unified School District Board of Directors. So thank you, Ken, for being here. And for all of my city peeps who are not here, you're missing a really great meeting, and hopefully they're going to be watching it because we are, in fact, filming it. And it should be broadcast later, hopefully on CCTV. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the great things we've done. Last month, we had 18 of our members of East Bay EDA and their partners come to Children's Fairyland in Oakland. And they conducted both a math and science experiments with young children. And this was our fourth STEM fair that we've had at Children's Fairyland. And this event truly aligned with our promotion of the importance of STEM learning and providing parents and caregivers the tools and tips to really reinforce STEM opportunities and learning in the home. And so we want to thank all of the Fairyland participants, and with special appreciation for our STEM fair sponsors, which was Aduro Biotech, the Alameda County Office of Education, AT&T, First Five, Alameda County, and the Oakland Athletics. And they really enabled the children to enjoy that day. This year, we will also be back in Oakland highlighting our region's international trade and investment activity, and we're going to be having our fourth annual international event, and it's going to be featuring two different discussion panels of businesses and local consulate representatives to maximize some of our networking opportunities. And every year, as I go to this award event, I am just amazed, impressed with what people are coming up with. And so right now, when you've been out meeting with your peers and you've seen something innovated in the East Bay, we really, really want you to nominate someone. Nomination period for the Innovative Awards ends on October 25th. Get those nominations in Contra Costa. Each year we're getting a few more nominees. We want to continue to do that. And we'll continue to see what truly is just bringing together such amazing thoughts, ideas, and ways to improve the world in our own community. And so this show, as we call it a show, it really is quite a production. It is going to be at the Fox Theater on March 26th, 2020. So please put that down on your calendars. And if you're interested in sponsoring it, being one of our sponsors, those get bought up very, very quickly. And so I recommend you contact our East Bay EDA team very quickly so we could make sure you have a sponsorship available for you. And finally, this kind of concludes my update on some of the things we're doing with East Bay EDA and some of our very fun upcoming events. I do want to now welcome James Gardner to the podium. And James is Executive Director of Bay Area, which is one of our content partners for today's event, and including helping with the East Bay Manufacturing Report for East Bay EDA that was just released on Manufacturing Day 2019. And hopefully you all have received a copy of that report. And if not, they are also available electronically. So thank you and welcome, James.
Morning. So how many of you know the 3 Ds of U.S. manufacturing? Have you heard these terms? Declining, dirty, dangerous. There's a bunch of them that people throw around, of course. And it's funny because in reality, you know, things are far more nuanced than what one might hear in the news. The reality is that manufacturing is quite strong in the United States. It has been for a long time. And the East Bay enjoys a very strong position for manufacturing in the Bay Area. So in the slide behind me, you'll see that the manufacturing sort of sector with regard to the employment profile over the last 17 years has sort of taken a dip through the recession and has been slowly and steadily gaining steam since, say, 2011. In this 17-year period, it had a high of about 120,000 jobs. It bottomed out at about 80,000 jobs in 2011, and then began to climb again to about 100,000 jobs now, a little bit north of 100,000 jobs. And that goes from, say, a 10% portion of the total employment job profile in the East Bay to about 8% now. But what's interesting is that during that same period of time, you see that there's a bit of a flattening with regard to the total percent relative to the total number of jobs. And that's driven by a few different factors. But I think what is so fascinating is that that 8% accounts for some 15% of the East Bay's gross regional product. So it has this outsized proportion of contribution to our economy, as well as to the culture of the East Bay. There are so many interesting things that take place as a function of manufacturing. The employment multiplier effect, the economic multiplier effect of manufacturing is unlike any other sector, and so manufacturing is a hugely important part of our economy. In the next slide, you see that of the 6 top manufacturing subsectors, of course, electronics and computer product manufacturing is still number 1, as it has been for decades. We enjoy a relatively high concentration of jobs relative to the national average, as the location quotient on the far right shows you, about 2-fold relative to what is seen sort of as the national average. But I think a really important point here is that of these 6 that are shown, transportation equipment, food, machinery, fabricated metal, and chemical, all of them have fairly strong location quotients. That tells you that we have not only a strong manufacturing base, but we also enjoy a very diverse manufacturing base, which is really important because as one industry or one sector or one large company, say, experiences a downturn, there's absorptivity, if you will, in the economy. And that gives us the resilience that we need and has been a really important part of the way the East Bay and the Bay Area in general has bounced back and really taken a punch and done so well through the downturns and the highs and lows of the U.S. economy. Next slide shows you some of the things that make manufacturing so great in the East Bay. Of course, if I can take it from sort of the 7 o'clock, the culture of innovation and collaboration, of course, in the Bay Area, that's sort of our stock in trade. That's one of the things that the entire world knows us for, and that's great. But in the East Bay, we enjoy being able to couple that to several other factors, not the least of which is the relative affordability of industrial space. as well as supply chains. We have a number of small manufacturers. Most manufacturers are quite small businesses, and they're very entrepreneurial, and they're very much about connecting to larger manufacturers in the East Bay and beyond to serve as that supply chain. So we have this web of real activity in the manufacturing space. But in addition to that, we have 10 community colleges just in the East Bay, in addition to the many others that are all around the Bay Area. Several CTE programs, some of which are award-winning and are real flagship training centers for machining and other curriculum. Proximity to workforce. So, of course, we are not bound by an ocean like our neighbors to the west, and so that affords us some strategic advantage as well. And goods movement infrastructure. Well, that needs no introduction. We have the roads, the rails, and the ports to support manufacturing, both in terms of export as well as importing and the raw materials needed to do that manufacturing. So the East Bay is really an incredible place to couple that innovation to all of the other factors that make manufacturing so strong in the Bay Area. So without further ado, though, I want to bring up our moderator for today, and that's Gene Russell, who's the CEO and president of Manex. Manex is an incredibly important foundational element that helps support manufacturing throughout Northern California. Gene himself is somebody that comes with a long pedigree of activity as a leader in manufacturing and now serves the manufacturing community at large. So I will welcome Gene to the podium, and thank you so much.
Thank you and good morning. It's a pleasure to have the honor to lead Manex, and I'd like to give a shout out to a couple of people. Darian, I saw you. Where are you? There you are. Okay. Thanks for coming. And thanks for the partnership with the East Bay EDA. Manex originally was founded by the East Bay EDA, and Bruce Kern, if you know him, he's still on our board. Today, Steve Tesler, our board chair, is here and has dedicated many years to the manufacturing sector and many years as our chairman through the good times and the bad times. And we are experiencing some very good times at Manex. Our year ended on September 30th, and we completed 91 major projects with 76 manufacturing companies. So one of the things I'd like to add, too, to the chart about why people are here, Rod, how are you? Rod Hirsch from Department of Commerce. Thanks for coming. People want to live here, man. Don't you want to live here? That's right. That's why our CEOs of manufacturing companies are still here and are resisting the Texas governor's appeal. So how are we going to survive? How are we going to transition to the next big thing? And we are positioned very well indeed based on technology. Industry 4.0 is real. It's happening. Some of the things that are driving it, of course, the cloud, which came about, I guess, I don't know, I'm not an IT guy, maybe 20 years ago, maybe 15. The cloud has empowered automation in a big way. What is the other driving force? AI. AI is driving it and will continue to drive it. And it's becoming sort of a Cold War between countries right now. So those things, along with what you like to hear about in the news, IoT, wireless data, all those things are changing manufacturing. And we have Silicon Valley and we have smart people. So I think manufacturing will definitely continue to grow in California. I think it's going to change in many big ways, and we'll be at the forefront. But it's fun to be at Manex and to be on the floor of a lot of manufacturing plants and talk directly to C-levels. And we have C-suite people in our panel today, so come on up, panel, and I'll have you individually introduce yourself, and I'll walk through a few questions that only they can answer because only they know. Thank you. Come on up. Also, Mark Martin from Laney College, valuable tool, STEM education, manufacturing trades tech, he's here. Hello, hello. There you go.
Hello, my name is Noreen King. My company is Evolve Manufacturing Technologies, and I'm in Fremont. Since 2014, I bought a building here. We manufacture medical equipment and biotech, microfluidics, genome testing equipment, stuff like that.
I'm Herb Bellucci. I'm CEO at Pulse Systems in Concord. We're a specialty contract manufacturer supplying components and sub-assemblies to the medical device industry. We're essentially a high-tech metal fabrication operation, employing 112 people, and ISO certified to work in the medical device industry.
Morning, my name is Michael Feser. I'm CEO of Lyncean Technologies. We are located in Fremont, 32 people. We are a manufacturer of high-tech electron accelerator-based light sources for science and industry. Our machines are 10 million plus, so very big machines, high-tech. Our business is more project-based because it takes about 2 years to build such a machine. And we are growing. We just signed a contract for $55 million to produce a gamma ray machine for a research institute in Romania.
My name is Jean-Yves Charon. I'm a co-founder and pastry chef of Galaxy Dessert Brioche Pasquier, and we make low-tech dessert. And I've been California for 35 years, and like to live here.
It's changing the hair color and face of manufacturing. So we're happy to have them. And by the way, they use technology. I've been to your plant, and you use a lot of technology, and a lot of fun stuff to watch, and then eat later. So starting with today, my first question is starting today with the title of today's event, Manufacturing 4.0. Much is being made about the changes in the manufacturing sector, including the trend towards automation and data exchange and manufacturing technologies and processes, including the Internet of Things, IoT, artificial intelligence, AI, and other related changes. How are you seeing this play out in your own companies, and what would you tell the audience about the future direction of manufacturing over time?
I get to go first every time, right? So
we can switch.
okay. You know, it's interesting. Hardships sometimes cause good things to happen, and our rate of pay of our employees has skyrocketed the last few years, and so it has forced us to look at a lot of things like artificial intelligence for inspection. When we start to look at our activities, we start to realize we spend a lot of time cleaning parts or inspecting parts. And so what we found is it's actually, these two things are merging, and it's becoming less expensive to buy some of this equipment because of just the way iPads and all these different things are developing and different kinds of apps. And so we're able to reduce our labor content by automating stuff and some of the data collections things. So now we take photographs of our finished product instead of having someone look at it, for example. And I was pleasantly surprised to see how the inspection equipment has come down relative to the cost of an individual. So we just recently bought a machine that cost about $70,000, but actually it reduced our incoming inspection by 50%. So it one person was able to move to a different part of the company as a result of that. So I think it's a very exciting time, actually, for us. And I can't think. That was a very long question.
No, it's very good. Very good.
Yeah, so for us, the question is productivity and competitiveness. And so, you know, there are other places in the world where you can manufacture using much less expensive labor. And so we're all about automation and investment in capital equipment. So in our facility, we have something in the neighborhood of 50 computer-run pieces of machine tool equipment. And so it's about having, you know, the right approach to selecting those those technologies, in some cases helping to develop those technologies, and finding the people who can sort of provide for the care and feeding of those high-tech pieces of equipment and operate them. So it's a challenge for us, but by doing that, we can remain competitive, even in what is generally perceived to be a high-cost place to work. I mean, the first question after the customer asks us if we can do it is, how much is it going to cost? And so the way we manage that is through the use of high-tech tools and the capital to afford to buy it and maintain it.
I would just add that I've heard from our clients that they actually will be questioned on the California location versus cost immediately. Oh, where are you located? So you have to be prepared to answer that. Right. Yep. Thank you very much, Herb. Yes, exactly, Herb. Thank you very much.
So our situation is a little bit different because our product, we built that over 2 years. It's a project-based approach. So in our manufacturing, we have less of automation and using these advanced tools and making investments in non-labor equipment. I would say one transition that we have made is we have been transitioning a lot to kind of cloud-based services and applications that help us in the back office, ERP system, and so on. So we are seeing some benefits right there that lower our costs of running the back office. Machine learning and artificial intelligence, actually in my previous company, we started to implement that in our product. I believe this is a very powerful technology for things that are well-defined, repetitive, and one prerequisite for actually using machine learning and artificial intelligence is data collection. And one thing for me personally that I always emphasize is it's important to collect as much data as you can on your process, on your manufacturing process, and even things that are not manufacturing related. Because without data, you cannot use these tools. And the sooner you start implementing data collection and gathering big data, the better, because you can bring in a machine learning analysis data scientist. The first thing they're going to ask you is what data you got and how clean is your data. And then for them, it's relatively quickly that they can run analysis on your data and give you some answers, and some of it might be really surprising to you.
Excellent. I like that. Machine learning.
I'm going to tell you a little story of what happened manufacturing in California. For us, in 2012, we got investment from a French company. In US, they were excited to invest in California with us. They are a great manufacturer. They have 16 plants in Europe, and since the cost of labor is so much higher in Europe than here, they wanted really to, they thought they could improve our manufacturing here in the United States. And in 2015, we bought land in Richmond. We bought 30 acres, and they were a little bit sticker shock of how much the land cost in California. And we said, don't worry, it's normal here, that's what it costs, and things like that. And we were going to build a plant of 300,000 square feet, and they got even more sticker shock when they saw how much it was going to cost to build the plant in California. And they said, there's no way, since we have we made dessert and bread and things like that, that we can make money doing that. And we decided to sell the land. Somebody wanted to buy it, somebody came, and we made $5 million selling the land. And they said, wow, we should be selling and buying the land. But we increased, since our business was going well in California, we increased our square footage where we are now, and we'll see what we do to manufacture pastries in California, since we sell all over the United States. That's a little story of our manufacturing low-cost products here. It's not as easy.
Tell the story before Richmond. I like how you started. Tell everyone how you started. It's a great story. And it's quick, but it's good.
Yeah. I rented, some people know Hunters Point Shipyard. I used to rent space there. And my girlfriend at the time was a lawyer, and she said, we can't get any good pastry in our law firm. I said, I can make some. And I made some, and they said, wow, we love it. Can you do it all the time? I said, okay, if you need it, I'm sure all the law firm needs it. And that's how I started the business.
Isn't that great? Yeah, I love that story. Not in the East Bay, but we have a ice creamery company down in San Jose. It's two Vietnamese sisters, and they did the credit card financing thing, and they went on the Shark Tank, and they won, and all that kind of stuff. And in a very short period of time, they got a little $3-4 million business with 32 employees, and that, you know, they're young, and they basically burnt out at Google and some other tech company, and they said, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to do something on my own. And so that's kind of similar to your experience as well. And I've sent their business plan to Jean because maybe he can invest in them. I don't know. No pressure. Okay, let me ask the next question. Job growth in the Bay Area has been happening at a record pace, and unemployment is at historically low levels. How are you finding and retaining talent in the current environment, and thinking about your current and prospective human capital needs? What is your assessment of the workforce pipeline, and do you have confidence that you will be able to hire the people you need to sustain your company over the next 3 to 5 years? So there's really like 4 or 5 questions in there, so I apologize. Just talk about your workforce, basically.
Yeah, well, you know, our focus really is trying to reduce the amount of employees that we have and try to increase our efficiency. And so what we're trying to do is build a company where everyone gets paid very well, but we don't have a ton of people. So combining that with growing pretty fast is a little bit tricky, but we've reorganized our company into small CFT groups, and everyone feels very bonded to their group of about maybe 10 people in the group. And I find that really reduces the amount of turnover, because people feel very, close to their team. In addition to that, I think our working conditions are very different than other contract manufacturers, pretty pleasant. So we don't have very much turnover. As far as recruiting, we're studying the millennials right now. We're trying to figure out what the heck they want. I'm like arguing with some of my younger guys. I'm like, well, why do you want to work from home? Are you going to work the same amount? Like, so then why don't you just come to work and take a day off? That's fine for me. So anyway, we have a kind of a age gap, me and the management team sometimes. And so I guess the key thing is, if I'm going to manufacture here and I'm going to be competitive with places like Costa Rica, I have to really manufacture smarter and leaner. Yeah, that's our focus. So, so far we're doing well. Yeah.
Thank you.
It's kind of good news, bad news with regard to hiring in the Bay Area. We've grown substantially in the last 3 years. We've actually more than doubled. Our employment has grown more than 100% in the last 3 years. So we actually have been fairly successful in hiring in this, what most people perceive as a relatively tight labor market. We may be the beneficiaries of our geography. We're way north. We're in Concord. We're north of Highway 4, sort of at the northeast corner of what would be considered the Bay Area. So we actually benefit by shortening people's commutes by hiring them to work in Concord. So we may be a little bit anomalous. So in terms of direct labor, we've actually been quite successful. It's a little bit different story on skilled positions. For instance, machinists. Machinists are, shall we say. They're relatively senior and relatively scarce these days. We're suffering from retirements there, and so those folks are harder and harder to find. And then professionals, getting professionals to relocate to the North Bay has been a little bit of a challenge. So we've done more hiring of recent college graduates. So we have about a half a dozen. With, we benefit from a strong university system, both UCs and Cal Poly and the state university system. So we have a sort of a second generation of technical professionals who we're developing, who like manufacturing, surprise, and we try to provide a good environment for them. But in terms of retaining employees, we've been really, really successful. So we typically hire temp to perm. That is, we use the temporary agencies for doing our recruiting, but we convert people. We try not to cycle through people. Once we've identified people that we want to keep, we convert them to permanent. And so we pay them well. We have to be competitive. We pay them well. We treat them with respect. We pay bonuses, and we have good benefits. And as a result, in 2018, our turnover was 1 person. We lost 1 person in a relatively tight labor market. So if you provide people with what they need, which is a steady job and a good work environment, they'll stick around, especially in a place where they're learning skills. So if it's a rich environment for the individual, then they can be retained. We have not seen a lot of turnover.
Very good input. The comment on temp to perm is, I see that all the time, and some of the reasons is that manufacturers are so busy that they don't have time to recruit. They're just getting stuff out the door. So there are a number of very good industrial recruiting companies, I won't name any names, that can find you production labor or even above production level. So it's just very common.
Yeah, I would like to also comment on that. We use that also almost exclusively for manufacturing staff. The temp to perm approach really works well, because if you hire perm directly, it's a complicated process of interviewing and so on, while the temp to perm process is very straightforward. You don't invest your people's time in it. So we use that almost exclusively. The retention topic, I would second that. We have not seen a lot of turnover in our company if the employees are fairly compensated and you create a work environment that where the employees feel included and at home. I don't see retention as a big problem. Our company actually couldn't exist anywhere else but in the Bay Area, because we are a spin-off from Stanford Linear Accelerator Lab. We require the specialized labor and training. We actually employ many people that have worked at the lab that wouldn't relocate to a different place. So for us, it's not an option to go anywhere else. Having said that, half of our employees, they are engineers or scientists. Recruiting has been very problematic for engineering and scientist types. It's very competitive, and bringing in labor to the Bay Area from elsewhere, very problematic from other parts of the US because of the cost of living, the housing. We have tried to overcome that by offering very generous hiring bonuses and relocation assistance. But even that sometimes is not enough to motivate people to come to the Bay Area. For people that are local, it's much easier. They typically already have their housing, and easier to recruit them. Also recruitment, one issue we have is a lot of the labor that has the skills is overseas. And bringing people in from overseas has become a lot more problematic over the last, I would say, 5 years or so. Very hard to get work permits for people. And if something is based on a lottery, how can you plan on an employee if there's a lottery? I mean, That doesn't make any sense, especially for the highest qualified people. And we recently, even for somebody who went through an extraordinary qualified visa, has been rejected. I don't understand. So that remains a very big issue. Yeah, I think that was it, what I wanted to say.
Very well thought out. Well, thank you for that answer. Yeah.
For us, we have people from 28 different countries working, and I love the diversity. And I think it makes us better as a company. And I always hire attitude compared to competence. I can teach competence, and a lot of people we have who are in management position now started as a dishwasher or a low-level employee. And I think you build morale that way, and you have a loyal employees based, and they stay with you.
Very good answers. Very insightful. I just want to add that, we completed our first two big automation projects in the food industry in 2019. And you've all read about employee fear factor on automation, and it's very real. So when a company needs to automate something, for example, in the food industry, quality control, food safety is huge, and it's getting bigger every day. So we have a lot of plants that are using people with clipboards, writing down data for the FDA and the USDA. So you can put cameras on the line using technology and IoT, sensing data, and it'll upload into their database, and it will stop that unnecessary clipboard writing. But when you go in to do that project, you're creating fear. I mean, they see the ManX shirt. Are they here to take my job? So I think ownership and any partners of the ownership, like a ManX and some of our subcontractors, really have to address that. Now, in the larger food manufacturer, which is in Pittsburgh with over 250 employees, they are not going to lay off. They are not going to reduce headcount. They're simply going to lower costs and automate and to streamline and get more stuff out the door. They're growing rapidly. It's an ethnic frozen food company. The smaller food company, we got a minority ownership grant from the state of California. It's called STBAEP. And we went back to all of the people that we knew over my 7 years with ManX that qualified, that could never do a project with us because of money. And one of them is in Union City. Good friends with him because we talk to him all the time. We said, hey, we can do this. And he's a flour mixer, blender, so he sells to Mexico, sells all over the United States. He sells blended recipes of flour. And they're hand-loading heavy flours, heavy bags of flour, and they're mixing in these giant mixers. So it's basically the world's largest KitchenAid mixer, if you will. And they can only do 6 batches a day using that. So we automated. They're just doing like 6 batches an hour. So thank you, State of California, for the minority ownership manufacturing grant, which we'll have again in the coming year. It's not a lot of money, but we use it well. We don't use it for overhead. We don't use it for anything but training. So I just want to share that workforce story with you. And the other thing I want to say is, for decades, we've talked about manufacturing in terms of number of jobs. That's got to change, because you heard here, I saw some flinches. Keith flinched, I think, when we mentioned less workers. It's, if you're an economist, you're just so used to reading those number of jobs per city or per plant, per industry. I am too. I'm guilty of that. That's how ManX addresses the market. But that's going to change. We're going to start looking at output. We're going to look at, revenue or volume output. I mean, there's a machine now that will make 1 million T-shirts a week with no labor. So, sorry, Bangladesh, but we can move it back here. I mean, that's happening. So it's just real. So I want to, speaking of Bangladesh and tariffs and things like that, Stephen wanted me to ask that question, And it's a very good question. By the way, Stephen wrote all these questions. I'm not smart enough to write these questions. Thank you, Stephen. So panelists, please comment on the extent to which your business is impacted by tariffs and other trade issues created by the current uncertain landscape.
We can mix it up. I can start.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we're relaxing now.
Okay, so for us, we haven't seen a big impact in terms of the material and subsystems that we source to build our product. The biggest impact for us actually has been on the sales side, because the tariffs and the trade war have created an immense amount of uncertainty, and about 20% of our potential customers are located in China. And those customers don't know what's going on. And they also, the climate in China has developed very negatively towards US products. And they are just in a holding pattern. And unless this is resolved in a good way, I see that these projects that we have been working on over the last few years, they're just stalled. And now I see some activity with Europe in terms of tariffs being implemented and trade barriers brought up. And there is a large potential that this will cause the same type of problem for our company as we have gone through with China over the last few years. So it's a very big concern for us.
Thank you.
Since we have a French partner now, we import around 600 containers a year to the United States of finished goods. And I haven't seen the list. I don't think we are on the list yet because we don't make wine or cheese. But there would be a big impact for a company who import wine and cheese in the United States. So far, we haven't seen for pastry product and things like that.
Okay, I'll go. So I think there's two sides to it. Certainly, the tariff situation is unresolved and changes every morning. But it is causing some uncertainty or concern on the part of customers. And so it may actually be a positive in the near term, in that because of that uncertainty, there's some sort of migration of jobs back to the U.S. And so I think that we may see some benefit from that. On the other side of it, from the raw materials end of things, we're seeing some indication that suppliers are taking shelter under the tariff issue. That is, that they're using it as a sort of as an excuse to raise their prices. And so it's hard to parse that out. I mean, what's real and what's just because it's a convenient excuse. But it is causing some increased costs for us and some supply shortages. And again, if the economy is strong, you'd expect lead times to go out. But we're seeing a trend towards price increases and longer lead times. But like I say, ultimately, it may, at least over the next couple of years, it may cause some hesitation on the part of potential customers to outsource offshore. So that could be a good thing.
I started in manufacturing in 1989, and that time there were tons of manufacturing jobs.
When you were 2?
Yeah, 3.5. Okay. And, as a professional in the manufacturing industry, I thought, oh, this is wonderful. We're going to manufacture everything in China, but there'll be all the stupid stuff. But we'll still have great jobs. And then I was so shocked 5-10 years later when I found out, oh no, all the jobs, all of the purchasing, all of the ops management, everything went. And, it is a big, everyone's freaking out because we have to pay 25% on imports from China, but think about how it hurt all of us all those years. That's the reason we were not competitive, is because of those, there weren't any tariffs, and there are tariffs in a one-way direction. Like whenever we bring in anything in the old days, anything that we ship, they put tariffs. So I mean, I feel in the long term, I think it may be a good reset for our country. And for me personally, I have not seen only one component. The price went up, and I questioned them because it was like, I thought we were buying this in the US from you, and now you're passing along this tariff. So, you know, stupid, right? I mean, he was putting 25% on the part, which is an American-made part, because he buys his components in China. Well, that can't be the whole, you know, then don't charge me on the whole thing. So anyway, so I haven't really personally been impacted in a negative way. I have been impacted in a positive way in that a lot of people who in the old days would have just considered manufacturing their product in China have now, you know, have second thoughts, and they come to us first. And what we try to explain is all the stuff we build, it's only 10% materials. I mean, 10% labor, it's 70% materials. And so, you know, I don't think you're saving as much as you think you are by going to low-cost regions when that's the case. So.
Yeah, I would like to add something in for the non-manufacturers that do prototyping design and then offshore. I have a lot of friends in that industry. I worked in that industry. I was in China from 1983 to 2012. I know the Chinese model well. But I can tell you that if you're designing and importing product, you're getting killed. I had dinner 2 weeks ago in Southern California with a friend of mine that built an outdoor furniture company from scratch, sourced it in China. He built it up to $80 million. He was making $7 million a year. He's now losing his shirt because of tariffs. So in the East Bay, for all those companies that do that, if you're an economist, city manager, city development person, be aware of that. If they don't have a 3 NAICS code that tells you that they're manufacturing here and they're a distributor importer, they're getting hurt. So, you know, even though ManX is geared to manufacturing here, I just want to make that, you know, well known. So it's something that you should look at in your city or your region. Great panelists. What do you think? I mean, come on, give it up. And they volunteered for this. I mean, this is, you know, they volunteered their very valuable time. We're not paying them. So, but I know Stephen's getting nervous. He wants me to do questions, right? Yeah. So let's do some questions. Do we have microphones? We do. Look, it's like the Price is Right.
Start with this side first.
3 of you are in high-tech manufacturing. Looking ahead, to what extent does the issue of rare earths impact your future manufacturing?
We do have that in the, we have some MRI equipment we build, and I guess they have problems with magnets, getting supply chain problems with that, but you probably know much more than I do.
I'll pass it to you.
Our equipment actually doesn't use a lot of rare earth materials. It's more base metal based, so I'm not really well positioned to answer that question.
Yeah, I don't have much to add. My perception of that is probably 1 or 2 levels below the radar for us, in that we're users of equipment and electronics that might consume those things, but we don't really see it. It may get passed through to us in terms of, again, supply shortages for things that matter to the equipment that we use. But since we're not in the electronics world, it doesn't impact us that much directly that we can see.
I'm sorry, what's your name, sir?
John Rollinson.
So, John, we do come across battery startups who are either affected by rare earth or their whole reason for being is some alternative technology in the Bay Area. There's a lot of activity in that sector. Are you in that sector? Okay. Next question.
Great panel. Your audience is composed of policymakers, decision makers, and influencers. So if you could tell us 2 things that we must do to help your sectors prosper, what would that be?
Some roads.
Yeah, exactly. I would say the BART is wonderful because I can bring people from everywhere, but then they can't get to my company, so they Uber. So if we had I think if we all got together and had a little shuttle bus that goes every hour or whatever, that would be huge. Yeah.
I'm serious about my comment about transportation. I've lived in the Bay Area. I've worked in manufacturing in the Bay Area since the late 70s, so I'm practically 40 years living here and driving around the Bay Area. Last week, I'll just tell a quick quick war story, right? Last week I had occasion to do a circumnavigation of the Bay Area, right? I went, seriously, I had an event in Burlingame, so I drove from my home in Orinda to Burlingame. From Burlingame, I teach class in San Jose. I drove down to San Jose State in the evening, and then that evening drove home. I was 5 hours in the car trying to drive around the Bay Area. Now, maybe it's inopportune times, but if you add up all the number of hours of wasted time of people sitting in their automobiles, burning gasoline on the highways in the Bay Area compared to the way it used to be, I call it the Los Angelesization of the Bay Area. We're definitely there, guys. So anything we can do. And obviously, public transportation would help take the pressure off of that if there's anything we can do for BART or any of the other transportation agencies. But it's just, in my mind, that's just waste and loss of competitiveness on the part of the entire Bay Area infrastructure.
My colleague in the back, Michael Shabaka, can relate. He's our business development director. I forgot to acknowledge him. He has to reach 5,000 manufacturers a year by car. So yeah, it's crazy.
I'm probably the only one who came to this event by electric scooter. Anybody else that came by electric scooter? I second the other panelists. Transportation is a real issue, and I found my own solution, which involves an electric scooter and BART and sometimes Uber, which I'm wearing a lot of safety gear, but keeping fingers crossed. I think transportation is a big issue in the Bay Area. I would say another one would be in terms of the pipeline of talent to keep a focus on getting people interested in getting education and training for these technical jobs.
Mark Martin, can you comment on that? Very good input.
Yeah.
What color is your scooter?
Black and red.
Black and red, okay.
I'm Mark Martin, and I work with the Bay Area Community Colleges on manufacturing workforce development. And so our focus there is on the skilled trades positions, machinists, welders, electronic technicians, which, and part of our challenge, as I think you know yourselves, besides it's a tight labor market, is the people misunderstanding the opportunities that are available in manufacturing. And James Gardner brought it up with some of his slides. There's actually the employment is growing, but really getting people motivated and parents motivated, which I think a lot of you in here are, to recognize that is a career path and a good career path for your kids or teachers, and that's something we're really working on. And my role is to help industry kind of find those skilled employees that they might need, as well as companies, as well as cities themselves and workforce agencies, to get connected with the community colleges and K-12 to let our kids know about the opportunities there that can be had. Because as you said, there's going to be a lot more highly skilled, trained people, and that's what we need to get kids to be aware of, and that they can have a good pay and good salaries.
Make sure you connect with Mark and anybody else he recommends for the pipeline.
I think for us, I think it would be affordable housing. I know when we just built offices in our building, nothing fancy, but when you see the permit cost you, we built $600,000 approximately, cost us to build the offices, but all the permit and things like that cost us $78,000 just to have a permit, and I think that's crazy. And people need to, if we want to reduce commute, they need to live near where they work. I think that would be really good for people. I live 10 minutes from where I work, and we had to buy houses for our people to be able to live in not far from where we are.
Excellent input. I think that's so true. But I see a lot of housing going up. I know you do. I live in downtown Walnut Creek, and they're building the 5 4-story buildings, you know, with the retail on the bottom. And I actually live in one of those buildings, and I really enjoy that lifestyle. But the roads haven't changed, right? I mean, I don't see any road construction, but what I see a lot of, you know, that transit center type of concept. I think it's great. I live 2 blocks from BART. I know they're building in the parking lot now. They built a garage for the people to park. So having that housing and roads, I think, is very important. And then the third thing that Jean mentioned was permitting. I hear that everywhere, not just the East Bay. I hear it in Sacramento, everywhere. The outrageous permitting process in California is just, you know, it's a killer. And then I'd like to circle back around to James' comment about manufacturing. California has the most manufacturers in the United States. Did you know that? Isn't that crazy? But they're all small. And that means a lot of them are poorly capitalized. They don't have budgets for this kind of stuff. So we need to address it. I mean, not everybody's a Tesla. We love Tesla. We love all those kinds of folks. We love Bayer, et cetera. But, you know, most companies are 10 to 60 employees. So those are the things to address as per Ed's point. Any other questions?
We have one question over here.
I'll let somebody else choose.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Fong Law. I'm the Alameda County Assessor. Don't forget to pay your property taxes. I also have a precision machine shop in Union City that my father started 30 years ago, which I also helped run for the last, I don't know how many years, since I was a boy. My question is based on property taxes and manufacturing. In California, there's a ballot initiative that's going to be on the ballot in November of 2020 called the Split Roll Initiative. What split roll says is the assessors like me will have to reassess your properties every year rather than starting off with the base year in which you buy your property. I would go in each year and reassess you. Right now, I reassess about 10% of all properties in the county each year. That would change. How would that reassessment of your property, some of you have been in business for a long time, affect your business, 1? 2, would you stay in the state still, or would it force you to leave the state in the event that it passes? And I'm not asking this to be biased in any way. I have not put out a public opinion about whether I support or oppose it. I just want to get the information. I want to know. Just so you know, in my prior life as well, I'm also a trained real estate and tax lawyer. So I represented companies before going into government service. And second part of the question, which is completely different than tax. Herb said that you didn't have a problem hiring machinists. I looked at the survey here and it said an average machinist is $25 an hour. In my company in Union City, I've offered $35 an hour and still can't get machinists. I've offered welders $55 an hour and can't get welders. What's your secret? Because I'm short in labor in my factory as well.
Yeah, I will comment on that. Maybe, like I said, labor is good news, bad news, and one of the exceptions is skilled positions like machinists. We've had to go outside the Bay Area. We're actually tapping into the aerospace infrastructure down in Southern California to bring machinists up here, so we're paying relocations. So there's that issue, and also it's the general age of that population. Skilled machinists, you know, tend to be late in their career. There aren't a lot of new machinists coming along. You know, whatever help we can get from the community colleges would be much appreciated. But yeah, that's definitely the outlier in our recruiting is skilled positions like that. Even more so than technical professionals. Skilled screw machinists are few and far between in the Bay Area. Most of them are in Southern California or in the Midwest. Oh, so
transportation, housing, as you both, all four of you, those are big issues.
in terms of taxation, I mean, it's another factor in the cost structure, and so property taxes is one thing. Whether that's what drives us out of the Bay Area, I think our customers have to decide, right? But ultimately, it impacts our competitiveness, our profitability. We have to be profitable in order to maintain our productivity, so that we can afford all that expensive equipment that we're purchasing and maintaining. And so it's just a question of whether it impacts us. You know, we lease our properties. Well, actually, we just bought a building, but in both cases, we're going to pay the property taxes. So it just comes right off the bottom line. whatever it is.
I mean, I think property tax is different than income tax, because income tax on a great year, you have to pay income tax, you know, boo-hoo. If you have a building, these buildings are worth a fortune, and you're not getting any advantage out of that, so it would be a very big pressure on us. Like, I guess our building doubled in value since we bought it, and which is just, it'll someday go down again, you know, so I don't think that it wouldn't feel fair to me anyway if we were to double the property tax on that building, and it would be a big hardship, very big, because this is a very hard business to make money, and our margins are very thin. So that would be a disaster for me if that happened. So.
I mean, in our case, we just moved into a new place, so as long as we don't see another doubling, for us it's not really a concern. Also, the property tax itself for us is not such a huge expense, so it will play only a minor role because we don't require huge space we manufacture a very high value product. So for us, not such a big deal.
For us, it will be a big impact because we need a lot of space to manufacture. And I think already rents in California are really high. And on top of that, we have the CAMs and the property taxes will be included in it. And since we are triple net, we will pay it. And it will pass directly it will impact our business.
I think Galaxy is a great example of what happens in a consumer-oriented business that'll be put out of business. So he makes a dessert. By the time it gets to the consumer, it's probably four times markup in order for everybody in the supply chain to make something. So ultimately, you, the consumer, are going to decide, are you going to pay $9.99 for a pastry, or are you going to pay $15.99? Which one are you going to buy? You're going to buy the one that's shipped in from Texas, or you're going to buy the one that's in Richmond paying super high property taxes. And my question to you is, how many more of you is it going to take to do it every year? I mean, are you going to build out 20 people, 30 people to go out and do this? Do you know? Yeah, so you do 10% every year, so you need 90% more people?
175 staffers in my office right now. We have a county of over 500,000 houses and businesses that we go through. And some of your businesses have been through an audit from my office. We audit your business to see what equipment you have. And I'll be honest with you, the biggest problems we have are the large companies. No matter what number we came up with, they will file an appeal because they want to save their money. It's the small businesses that suffer because you can't hire the lawyers like me to change your tax amount, right? I took this job because my father's manufacturing company was overassessed by $1 million a year. And I said that you shouldn't have to have a lawyer who's a tax attorney in order to get it right. So I took a pay cut to take this job. How much more people would I need to do it in the county? My estimate, I probably need to double my workforce. Because you have to remember, when we increase taxes, we get more appeals. And the appeals are always the large companies, and they take a long time. I have 8 people that just work on Tesla alone. Tesla is $3 billion of assessed value. That's 1% of the entire assessed value for Alameda County.
But I would add that
get it right though.
Yeah, every cost is an input cost. Every input cost results in a price to a customer. Customers have.
The money has to come somewhere.
What about the gas tax?
To pay for, I'm sorry?
What about the gas tax?
Gas tax doesn't cover nearly enough of what the cost is to build infrastructure in California. You are a manufacturing company, so you know what the cost is to manufacture and build here. Take that and multiply it exponentially to the roadways, to telecommunication infrastructure.
I would just be careful.
So there's a fine balance, right? You also need affordable housing for your staff. If your staff's making $25 an hour, they're making $70,000 a year. You can't buy an $800,000 house at $70,000 a year.
Okay.
You subsidize housing. Where does that money come from? That's the balance. I'm not saying I I support one way or the other.
Right.
I'm trying to learn from you what it would affect you, so that way I can make an education.
I'm going to have to call time. We have other questions. But I will tell you that if you were interested in a study that I just bought, it's heavy. It's 600 pages. It's why companies are leaving California. But it's a good study. I just sent it over to Lenny Bendoka at GoBiz for him to take a look at. It's dense. It has a lot of data you might be interested in. Just let me know. It's already paid for by Gene Russell. Next question. Keith.
I kind of want to follow up on the comments you just made. Outside of offshore development, manufacturing that's taking place, domestically, where do you keep your eye on what other state where there seems to be this ecosystem growing that is taking it the most competitive place of manufacturing for all of you?
We get a lot of phone calls, approximately once a week, for us to move. Virginia, North Carolina, to Nevada, to move because there is no state tax, and they want business over there. I used to be in San Rafael, in the Bay Area. They don't want business. They want people houses in San Rafael, and I had to move to Richmond because they, at the time in 2005, they wanted business who are, pretty clean business to come there. But we get solicited over time by other states to come over there and move our business from California.
Yeah, I take a look one state to the east. I mean, that's pretty. They're making a lot of moves in the right direction in terms of providing land and infrastructure for companies. So it's been a surprise to me that Nevada hasn't been more active in trying to induce companies to move up there. But I think there's potential for that, especially, we're talking about taxation in various forms and regulation in various forms. It's not very far from the Bay Area, so I would take a look at that in terms of, Texas is pretty far away. Utah's making some noises, but boy, Nevada's, if you're looking at the Bay Area, that's pretty apparent.
I have a study on where they went, historically, where the people that already have left. It's Texas, it's Nevada, it's the Carolinas. And if you look at reshoring from Asia, it's Mexico first, and then the Southeast because the labor is non-union. We have, I don't know of any reshoring here in California. Noreen?
We have lost some work to Tijuana. Yeah,
Yep.
So some of the big contract manufacturers, they kind of are in San Diego, but also Nevada, so.
Yep.
Yeah, and so we're in the medical device industry, and so historically, places like Ireland, you said excluding Costa Rica, excluding offshoring, domestically, the usual suspects, I think.
Next question, this gentleman here with the shirt.
So this has been really interesting. I know it's through the folks here. Something just came to my head after listening to a number of questions through this. Versus the overall supply chain. If movers and shakers, called influencers these days, if we all collaborated, and if there's some way to provide incentives for Bay Area, or in this case, East Bay Area manufacturers to collaborate with each other in buying components and sharing that wealth, it might drive the local manufacturers to give them incentive to work with other local manufacturers rather than going elsewhere. So keeping more of the dollars here through that collaboration, whether that's through tax incentives or reduced cost burden one way or another. Okay, if within our called economic development zone, maybe that's the whole East Bay, if you're doing business with someone else in the area, you get this incentive for doing that versus going further out.
So, right. So would you buy locally or would you buy lowest cost?
I'd have to do what's right for the customer. So it could be the right thing for the customer if you coordinate it, I think that people just don't really look at the whole picture. That's the problem when they look at cost. you know. So we buy molds in China. You know, that drives me nuts. I just think that some of the stuff is done on automated equipment, but, you know, I just don't think anyone's looking at the big picture. And I think the most important thing is if everyone looked at all the activities for green, for example, we pour millions of dollars into green. Nobody ever thinks, like, why are we manufacturing so far away from the customer? You know, that's not green at all. It adds so much excess inventory. So it's just so much is wrong, but nobody takes a big picture of the whole world. And I was in China this summer, and oh my God, you can't even see out the window. It's so much smog.
Can't breathe.
Yeah. So, you know, these are all huge problems. They should all be looked at one time. And so I think that there's something to what you're saying, but I don't know how to achieve it.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm aware of things that cross the Atlantic several times in the process of being manufactured at various. Yeah, go back and forth, right? They might go across the Atlantic simply to get inspected and then get sent on to another operation. There's some crazy things going on. But in terms of this question of local sort of B2B infrastructure, I think that's important. I think it's overlooked. I think it's one of the benefits of being here in the Bay Area is that we do have a strong history and what I call a manufacturing infrastructure, the ability to get support from other suppliers. As you said earlier, a lot of the suppliers are small, and so not all of us are broadly capable. That is, we're not completely integrated, and so we need support from other suppliers. So I think that is important, and that actually is today a benefit. We may not do it so consciously, but today it is a benefit of being here. Is because we have support for things that we need to do. That if you know, if I was in Iowa or whatever, it might be harder to get done. FedEx still goes from place to place, but the collaboration is harder across time zones and with distance. So I think that's one of the positives about being here is we do have a lot of capabilities across a wide spectrum of capabilities.
Yeah, we actually source a lot of parts locally, and for us it's important because we need to go and inspect parts while they are being manufactured. But in the end, we always are looking at what's the cost to us. So in the end, it has to be competitive, and there's no way to avoid that. And I am not sure that kind of incentives that are based on subsidies would be the right approach.
So we're going to close out. I just want to add one comment. So we're part of the Manufacturing Extension Program and have been for almost 25 years. And so as a result, we talk to other people like us in every state. Every state has an MEP, is what we're called. And your question is very interesting because if you blow it out to the United States, it's amazing when you see how many companies can't find it in the U.S. I mean, the flow on this platform, this national platform that we have under the Department of Commerce of I'm looking for this, and I'm looking for that, and I'm looking for this, it's not in the United States. We've gutted it, you know, it's sad, and that's why we're working on it. Well, I want to thank our panelists. I want to thank each and every one of you for coming out. Stephen Bader, and his staff, and everybody who participated. Thank you so much.
Again, I want to thank everybody for coming. I do want to end real quickly on two anecdotes, if I can. 30 years ago, this organization was founded as a result of trying to make sure that we dealt with the competition that our Port of Oakland was having in terms of competing against other ports, not only in the state of California, but around the country. This organization was founded by bringing together environmentalists, labor, business, and others. And over a course of a year, working out a deal within themselves to make sure that we could dredge even deeper in the Port of Oakland here and allow us to be competitive, not only with the other ports in California, but within the United States. That's one anecdote I want to give you. We used to have, before Tesla, New United Motors. It was a joint venture between General Motors and Toyota, and existed right at the Tesla plant for about 24, 25 years. During the course of their stay there, some of their challenges had to deal with getting the supply chain, which was all around the United States, more located more closely towards that manufacturing site, NUMMI. It was also working with Union Rail in order to make sure that that happened. It was also continuously working with Toyota to make sure that all of those things worked together, as well as working with the union. It was this organization, along with other organizations, that really sustained for as long as it was there, New United Motors, and we continue to work with Tesla around its challenges. That's only a reflection of the issues that we were talking about today with respect to manufacturing in this area. The fact that although we might have a diverse group of interested parties, government, business, labor, the philanthropic community, community-based organizations, and others, that we sit around the table not just as East Bay EDA, but we do that also as the Bay Area Council. We will just be going to China in about 3 weeks again, trying to read the pulse from China on what's going on. I mean, the Bay Area Council goes at least twice a year. We do participate in that. I will be on that delegation. I was last year. And we do that similarly with other institutions that have the same interest that we do, 9 Bay Area counties, with a focus here on the East Bay. I thought it was important to say that before we leave, to show, again, the relevancy of this organization since its foundation. Again, I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank our conveners, AM Bay Area, and Mannix. And Mannix has been an integral part of the Bay Area Economic Development Organization since its inception of Mannix. And I want to thank you for the continued work that you do on behalf not just of manufacturers, but the ripple effect that it has into our economy. And I want to underscore that. And the fact that we had this event a couple of weeks ago at Children Fairyland dealing with STEM shows that we're not just talking about today, we're trying to deal with preparing the workforce for the future by stimulating young minds through the STEM projects and through the events that we're hosting and co-hosting along with other conveners. Please keep in mind the upcoming International Consulate Summit that's taking place, the 4th year that we've hosted that. It will bring a wide array of consul generals and others to the same place, conveners, to kind of get a sense of what's going on in Asia, in Central and Latin America, in Europe, in Africa. And so this would be a good opportunity for you to kind of have the same kind of experience at the International Consulate Summit that we have. And nominations before the end of October for the upcoming Innovations Award. It really is like being at the Academy Awards. If you haven't experienced it, it will sell out, I guarantee you that. And the fact that you will hear and see on video and experience a lot of innovation that is taking place throughout the East Bay, it really gives you a sense of, I can do it too, and appreciativeness for what goes on in the East Bay. I want to say thanks again for attending the meeting. I want to say a big thank you for the staff of East Bay EDA, Stephen and others. Darian, thanks for holding us together until Stephen came on board. You know, I appreciate that. Bruce Kern is going to join us for putting together the 30th year anniversary that's coming up, the original CEO for East Bay EDA. Again, with that, thank you very much. We're adjourned.